Christina.
Hi.
How are you?
Definitely I have, since the last time we were interviewed, or
That
we
was
did that.
5 years
It was
ago.
5 years, 2019, right?
2019.
Well, I will talk about the startup a little bit.
Okay.
So, did not have a CTO.
Mm-hmm.
Did not have any investors.
Mm-hmm.
I have a CTO, or a fractional CTO, but hold equity. Completely in the process of closing the in-person event business. So I'm not trying to do that thing where we kind of combine the both or whatever.
Yep.
And
You're just focusing on the app.
just on the app.
Okay.
We have angel investors who were just apparently waiting for me to invite them in, which was amazing and also a scary responsibility now at this stage. And they fully know that it's a risk, and in my mind, if it goes south, I can pay them back, but they are not expecting that, and they remind me that they're not expecting that, and also that they know I'm not going to let them down.
They know the risk.
And we're in beta.
Good.
Which is amazing hurdle, and it just really opens up a lot of future hurdles that are super scary, and all I can say is thank God I entered the dark night of the soul and walked that horrible hellfire journey, and went through it, and I'm going, I'm exiting, which, ash follows you, and there's still burns in my skin, and I'm, realizing that I'm not completely at the other side yet, but I guess that's kind of my segue of my other passion project. So right now I have the startup, and then I have this other project that I'm working on. These things on my wall.
Yes, I went through this 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, so I did, and I don't know if we touched on it in the last interview 5 years ago, but when I was first diagnosed after I had a molar pregnancy, and it really caused so many hormonal issues in my body and affected my nervous system deeply, and then ultimately ended my marriage, which I'm divorced now February 13th, 2023.
Gotcha.
So over a year. Basically, I negotiated with the PhD program to do a mentorship because I wasn't able to handle the coursework. I was a little bit vulnerable. I just gave them a very dry letter from doctors of the two diagnoses. So the molar pregnancy, and it turned into it was a molar pregnancy that went wrong. So it elevates your pregnancy hormones, and it can get dangerous, and I was stubborn because I didn't want to give up my uterus, and it could have gotten much worse. It could have turned into a type of cancer. Luckily I got the hysterectomy before we went there, but they were very accommodating, and one of my chairs for the program and my PhD did a mentorship where I wrote a manuscript about the trauma I experienced from age 3 to 10.
And to nail on that, for people watching this who haven't done the deep dive that you have and that I have, there's a period of time in there's two really crucial periods of time in a child's emotional development. One is from about day of birth to age 2 or 3. It's really important for a child to understand safety. Because their nervous system isn't developed. They don't, they've come out of total safety into a world where they don't understand anything. That's where the stranger danger comes from, because they don't understand. But then there's another chapter, which is 5 to 10. And 5 to 10 is a different form of safety. That is when you start to become an adult, literally, and you start looking to your parents to make good decisions for you, to point you in the right direction. and for them to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And that can be a problem. And we live in a very selfish world. We live in a very self-absorbed world. And so you end up with parents saying, yeah, well, so I wasn't a great parent, deal with it. And that doesn't help you. That just sends the thing spinning. Your situation is a little bit different than mine in that for me, and man, seeing this timeline on the wall, I have so much respect for you. And when I talk to entrepreneurs, I tell people, look, raising money is really easy if you've got your shit together. And it doesn't just mean a great business plan and a great pro forma, it means up here. Yeah. People can sense whether you have the ability to execute or not based upon the words that come out of your mouth. Are you secure or insecure? And so, yes, I respect this. And I tell people, every entrepreneur, in order to be successful, you've got to do this work. Yeah. So why I bring that up is what you and I've talked about offline. Yeah. In addition to this, the previous interview 5 years ago was what really amazes me. And I didn't notice it because I was 40 years of just go, building companies, exit, build company, exit, build company, exit. That's all I've done. I didn't realize that entrepreneurs have a few things I'm seeing in common. ADD or ADHD, attention deficit disorder. I also run into a lot of entrepreneurs now that privately will tell me, yeah, well, I think I was diagnosed with Asperger's, or I think I've got some autism issues. And I'm sitting here going, why are these things synonymous with one another? And why do entrepreneurs have them? But here's the most important thing that you and I have talked about is the social anxiety, the nervousness, the feeling of not fitting in. Do you think that's why you're an entrepreneur? Just easier than to deal with them?
No.
Okay.
I think it's about taking back my power.
Okay.
And I think like a lot of the people with Asperger's, with autism, with ADD, well, at least younger entrepreneurs, they know their diagnosis relatively earlier compared to us. But I'm 48. I don't know if you want to say.
I was 50 before and I was uncomfortable with the diagnosis.
Exactly.
Because I feel like I'm stealing something, because I truly know people whose lives are 24 hours a day dealing with an autistic child. And so when a health provider says to me, we think you're on the Asperger's spectrum, I'm looking at myself going, I'm fine.
See, and I think that is what is shifting for younger entrepreneurs. And I think when you think about things like Asperger's, yes, you have these icons like Elon Musk is iconic we go to. However, you don't do the backstory of how someone with Asperger's is able to achieve those things. Right. And when you do the backstory, you see this very supportive, creative family structure around his Asperger's to allow him to thrive. And I think that's what's missing from these stories. And I'm hoping that the younger entrepreneurs can, through their own process, because you're never going to get his true backstory. He's too big, almost.
Right.
And so I think like these younger entrepreneurs, I run across a lot of women entrepreneurs that have something different, and a lot of times it comes down to taking back my power.
Okay.
And maybe that's like the gender role differences.
Yep.
But that's what it is for me. Now I will say like embracing a diagnosis of on the spectrum and radically accepting that and not feeling guilty or that you're taking away anything from anyone else.
Who's legitimately dealing with problems.
But it's not a zero-sum game.
Nope, it's not.
And it's a spectrum for a reason. And until society can catch up with the concept of a spectrum, we're just all hurting. Medically we're all hurting. And so I think that having conversations like these and people that are just starting the startup journey,
this is my
first startup, and the open conversation, and I've found that my story I'm not disassociating the emotion anymore. I'm processing some of the emotions.
Very well put.
And having done that, now I can start to share my story in a real way. Because back when I did that class at Gonzaga, yes, I got an A. I wasn't.
You weren't fully engaged.
I wasn't.
You were good enough to do the material.
Yeah, and I wasn't in any way healing myself through doing that writing either. And I think that's a big misconception, is like, well, I'm going to go write my story, or I'm going to go write about my trauma, or I'm going to share on social, and that's going to be healing. And I'm not trying, like, especially when you're in a PhD program, people fight you on this. I'm not trying to take away from that process. But what I'm saying is not the end be all.
Every situation is incredibly different.
And you have to, for me, I'm a huge advocate of accepting the diagnosis. And I get a lot of pushback on that.
See, for me, that what you just said there, for me, is one of the biggest heartbreaks that I've dealt with over the past 4 or 5 years. And this is one of the reasons why I literally went invisible for a while. And I mean, I even started to post stuff on social media and then deleted a bunch. Because I was like, is my mindset really right? Am I really ready to make amends with myself? And am I ready to now be able to tackle this? You talked about something earlier in this conversation where you talked about at some point in time you have to leave the process of healing and you have to just say, okay, well, you know what, now I've got to go apply it.
Yeah, and it's not, like, I don't necessarily like the leaving terminology because it's not. It's what do you do with this?
Right.
And for me, I think because what I was indoctrinated to in a very criminal system
as we talked
was you never admit guilt.
Nope. That's narcissism.
The only correct answer you ever say to a police officer is no.
Yep.
And you never ever write anything down.
Nope. That's
And these were life lessons taught to me from a very early age. So when I was learning to write and talk, it started because I could have inadvertently said the wrong thing to a police officer. So I was a drug runner by 6.
I mean, I can see your timeline, and this is very private to you. I don't want to show you.
No, you can show it. You can show it. It's gone in the book.
Okay, but this is amazing because I mean, you see each age along the way. Yeah, you were a high risk kid.
So
I mean, it's a miracle you didn't end up in prison. And I'm not putting you down, but I'm just saying.
No, it's been a lifelong fear to end up in prison. So, you know, I don't know birth 1, 2, and I've also had to come with the terms that I'm not going to know. No. And I mean, I know some things and I can recover some documents, but I know starting at age 3.
Your notes become more detailed at age 3. Yeah,
and those 2 pictures I know were in child pornography print magazines. And they're innocent, lovely little pictures. But who the fuck puts a 3-year-old in a string bikini?
A screwed up dad.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I have to get the documents around the whole family situation, so I don't really have that yet. But I was given a pony either for my 4th or 5th birthday. Ecstatic. I mean, how blessed is that?
Right.
I'm a little kid with a pony. Now, backstory, I grew up in Miami, born and raised in Miami, but I lived like a touch point of where we lived, because when you live with like a loser criminal parent, but most criminals are not successful because it's very hard. Just like startups.
Oh, no.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And then if you have any addictions, just forget it. It's not going to happen. And so, but now as an adult and processing and understanding the delusion and then the whole indoctrination, I got the pony and I was taught to ride bareback to hide the bruises from being raped by my father. At 4, it started. So there was strategy. there.
Yeah.
And
The manipulation.
yeah, and so also he knew how to get away with shit because
that's how his brain worked.
Exactly. And then
and you're taught that that is a good attribute to have because everybody around your dad and everybody around you function the same way. And so then you go out in the world and you don't understand why that's not acceptable.
Yeah, or you find places where it is acceptable.
Yes, which is even worse.
Yeah, and so it's funny because I feel like I ended up in spaces that were legitimate, but these things were somehow, like some of the things I was taught, I figured out early on how to flip them to my advantage. So I've always been very good at risk management type stuff because I literally only see opportunity and there's no judgment on the type of opportunity. So I would, if I could look at like a layout of a building and say, you can't put the fence that close to the door, you can't, there's a gap here, someone can break in. And people would always ask me, do you come from a military family? Because that's common. And I would just say, no, I just have an eye for these things.
That's called hypervigilance.
Yes, like extreme hypervigilance, like strategic hypervigilance.
You were the drug dealer casing the joint.
Exactly.
At age 6.
At 8, like, and the thing is like, I'm writing a book about this now, and I'm laughing with you,
but it's not. It's not. The pain is brutal.
It's a release, and there's times when I'm writing that it's very heavy, it's very dark, and I'm
Do you
very
ever stop and cry?
Oh, I cry while I'm writing.
Yes, I do too.
I fucking cry all the time now. Oh my God.
Because you're allowed to.
And I can.
Yes.
So not what my dad, he doesn't get credit for this. So at 3, he asked. I said no. He never asked again. And then there was grooming from 3 to 4, and then 4, it started, and I disassociated all of the pain. So the first time I felt physical pain again, was when menses, so when I started menstruating, and then when I had my son. And so I came out of this, and everyone can go buy the book. The book will be out by December of 2025. So go buy the book. From Miami with Love, and this is Christy, because that was my nickname when I was little. But the way that I escaped, so we'll fast forward, but the way that I escaped is I eventually at 10 put my dad in prison.
Yeah, and so I see the paperwork, and that had to be really, really tough.
He got 25 years.
That's federal documentation. That's you were in federal court at age 10, testifying.
Stone cold.
That's heavy. That's it. I've been to federal court twice in my life. That's nothing to mess with.
So by then, the disassociation was used by the system because there was a couple things that were great. I did something that caused my grandfather to call the cops on my dad. Cops came out, figured out, like...
They put 2 and 2 together.
No, there was already an open case. The state had an open case against his... It wasn't sexy back then, but identity theft.
Sure.
And credit card fraud and all of that stuff. And I would remember vaguely we would go down to Coral Gables to this, like, guy that wasn't the usual crew for the birth certificates. And he would always be leery of me being there, but he kind of, like, he only let my dad go pick up the birth certificates, like, maybe 2 times, and he was like, the second time he was like, don't, like, my dad never was the person that went there. And so, basically, like, they left me, you know, because there's a like, when and police officers that see this or criminal justice understand, like, you come out, you're kind of like, well, fuck, we got him, but there's coordination that has to happen. So he thought he got away with everything. By then he was a crackhead, like crack.
Completely delusional.
And like ridiculous endurance too. Like, I don't know what the fuck. Like, but it's crazy. I mean, back then he, you know, cut it with baking soda because he would make it. So like it was one of my chores. I always had like drug manufacturing chores. And so this is what makes the book fun.
Yeah.
These, like, there's stories in this book
I'm
fun.
picturing the movie Goodfellas.
I'm a little kid in the
But
kitchen.
toward the end, when he was mixing with his girlfriend and his wife, and yeah, I mean, it really gets a little toxic.
It does. It does. So then I'm being prepped as a state witness. My body is literally the evidence because as soon as they picked me up, took me to Jackson. When they did, the social worker picked me up, took me to Jackson, did a rape kit, found semen, but no DNA back then, you know, and obvious signs of like years of molestation.
Right.
And then, you know, I was the only hard evidence.
Yeah.
They wanted all of this other stuff.
But you were the pin that tied it together.
And they wanted more from me. But I was trained like not, you know, don't remember names of faces. So like as I got older, there was more indoctrination that happened, and I, even to this day, it's like I have to make an effort to remember names in a certain way, and it's a hurdle that is like unlearning and it's hard tied to the trauma.
I'm dealing with it too.
But in this book, I'm naming fucking names. And so motherfucker ended up taking a plea, 25 years. So no one at that time got 25 years for
what he did.
For any type of abuse to their own children. And so he took the plea for whatever reason he did. I don't know why. And he never admitted guilt. He stuck to his rules. If you see on the paper, it says no contest, whatever that. So there's guilty, not guilty, no contest. And people forget about the third one.
Yeah.
And then there's a protective order.
Yep.
And then when I was about, Christopher was maybe like 6. So it was around 2006, and that's the second book. He sent me a letter. I had a P.O. box from like age 18 because of some other stuff. And luckily I just kept the P.O. box. And it had, also teaching the secret language. You know, a lot of people that watch this or whatever, that grow in criminal systems will understand these things. Because these are just part of what you learn as survival mechanisms. And he wrote some shit in that car, like, I'm watching you. I don't know, like, threatening, obviously threatening. I took it to a fucking state trooper and put his ass in prison again. Because by that point, I realized that some people are pure evil. Yeah,
they're sociopaths.
Not because of circumstance or lineage. It's who they choose to be. It's who they enjoy.
And they enjoy the manipulation. And this was something, you just hit on something that is so incredibly important. My life was nothing like yours. Okay, nothing.
I'm glad.
Nothing.
I'm really glad.
You know,
but you had your own traumas.
Yeah, nobody gets through this life without some traumas. You know, I had an ideal childhood. I grew up in, you know, the reference of Mayberry RFD is in the Andy Griffith Show. I mean, cane pole over my shoulder, walking down the river to fish, little country town in the middle of no place in Nebraska. Life was great. But there are so many things that you and I've talked about that really resonate, and I want to get to what you just said about the way people are wired. This is the one thing that was so traumatizing for me. And I'm a tough son of a buck. I played this game my whole life. And look, in my lifetime, I've known a dozen people who died of violent crime. Okay, I had, you know, family members drank themselves to death. Good friends stuck guns in their mouth, pulled the trigger. Friends that were in homicides. My dad's best friend, for God's sake, his nickname was Herbie One Leg because he got his leg shot off leaving another man's house. Okay, these were not. But see, in my mind, I had elevated those people to the status of role models because they were idolized in the community. The tougher you were as a cowboy, the more of a hero you were. Now, this is where this sociopathy comes about for me. And you know, I look at my life, and like you with your timeline. I mean, I sat in my villa in Antigua for 2.5 years with sheets of paper all over the walls, working through this exact same thing, going back as far as I possibly could, like you've done, because I wanted to know where the road forked. Because I wasn't a bad kid, and I'm not a bad person, and I've been very successful. But when I say where the road forked, meaning where did the anxiety begin? Where did the issues inside of me begin? Well, it was very simple. For me, the community where I came from, you know, I was a weird kid. I didn't realize I was autistic, and I did a lot of stupid shit growing up, and I was ostracized for that. But the killer for me was, I had surrounded myself, and we talked about this in the first interview, good bad people and bad good people. And I had surrounded myself with some hybrid of that. And the scary part for me was, in the spring of 2018, there was about a 24-hour period of time where I had a completely coincidental conversation with one of my investors who said something. He had a belly full of booze. He said something he shouldn't have. Red flags went off. Turned, went home, sat down, talked to my wife, said, I can't believe this happened. This is, you know, this is serious. This is a really bad situation that I'm in the middle of. And her reply to me, because these people had done something really stupid, and her reply to me was, well, I would have done the same thing if I was them. And I remember now I look back at my life and go, holy crap, there were some sociopathic people right inside the wire, inside my circle.
Yeah.
And I didn't see them.
Yeah, and I think like...
How can you not see that?
I think you can't see it in other people until you see it in yourself.
So that was a scary part for
Yeah.
me. Because then I looked at them, and then I looked at me in the mirror, and then I looked at them again, and I said, I remember consciously thinking to myself, holy crap, my life's been amazing. I've accomplished unbelievable things with my life, considering I came out of Boys Town as a ward of the state.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, if I can just get away from the crap that I'm dragging around, imagine what I can accomplish with my life. But that was the hard part. That was the really hard part. Because when you have to cut off all of those ties and all of those connections with all of those people, and you have to start over, like when you met me. I mean, I moved to Miami 5 years ago. I threw the SIM card away out of my phone. I threw away phone numbers and emails, some of those powerful people in the world. Started over my life with 2 phone numbers on a SIM card. That is a scary, naked place to be in Fort Lauderdale. And in a hotel room and going, so this is the next chapter of your life. But I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you. I've seen you grow.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, until a human being is capable of being honest with themselves, like you and I have been.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at myself in the mirror a lot of times and went, what's wrong with me? I let those people in my life, Christina.
It's not anything, like I don't see it that way anymore because I spent a lot of time thinking there was a lot of stuff wrong with me.
And I'm going past that too now.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, you know what, I was.
There's a lot of language I want you to change, by the way. A lot of language there. And that's good. That's good. That's reaffirming to me.
Yeah.